welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast series. I'm Nina Lockwood, founder and director of Intuitive Interim and Executive Search. Throughout this series, I will be sharing engaging conversations with talented leaders from across the UK transport sector. Today, I am delighted to welcome Martin Kearney, Chief Operating Officer for Nexus Tyne and Wear Metro up in Newcastle in the North East. Martin joins the railway as a trainee way back in the 1980s and has worked through his career in operational roles in control room. He's had a stint in international transport and is back in Newcastle running various different projects as well as the operations for Nexus. I'm delighted that he's joined us to share his career story and his thoughts and hopes and wishes for the future of the transport industry. Martin Kearney, Chief Operating Officer for Nexus up in the sunny North East. Warm welcome to the Intuitive Insights podcast. I've got you here in the end. I've got you on the virtual couch after all these months of asking. It's a delight to see you. How are you?
Thanks, Dean. I'm good. Quite embarrassed, really, if anything. The first time you asked me, I think was it Catherine O'Brien, your first one, or one of the first ones?
Yeah.
And I remember you talking to me about this around that time, and I was, me? No. I think you're scraping the bottom of a barrel now. Sorry.
Well, no, definitely not. I've known you obviously for a few years now, and I know your story, and I know that our podcast audience will be really interested to hear it. So in time-honoured Intuitive Insights fashion, what I'd like to start with is to go right back, Martin, to the beginning of your career. And I'd like to know why the transport industry in the first place. Talk to me about the roles that you've done, and then bring us right up to date with what a week in the life of the Chief Operating Officer of Nexus looks like.
Well, let me tell you a long story, Ben, because I'm going back to 10th of July 1989. I now feel really old sharing that date, but it's an unexciting start, really. I was a teenager, desperate to leave school, but I was a boy. And I think it's all right to say at that age, I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So the dead honest truth was I was offered a job as a railway trainee on £69 a week. For some reason, it's a Yorkshireness in me. I remember the £69 a week. So it was literally the first job offered, and the first one I said, well, we'll do this for a little while and see where it takes me. And it doesn't take long to get in your blood, doesn't it, railway? I don't believe. No. I was only a trainee actually for 6 months. It was very much for times where you'd become a trainee, but it was great in the respect of I think there must have been 25 or 30 of us. And they find different roles for you, certainly at the lower end, and you get experience going around parts of the organisation. I had a job created for me, I think it was, or certainly created. It was a new role, just in the admin, in the January 1990. And again, that was just, it was quite short-lived, but it was a case of, let's grab somebody, it seems okay. Before, I think my first real job was Leeds Station rosters, and it's funny saying that now. I was a roster clerk for a few hundred staff on Leeds Station. Right. And as going towards 17 years old, quite terrifying. So I'm saying I was a boy. You know, you've got these 50, 60-year-old guys that have worked on the railway all their lives. And all right, I'm doing their rosters, I'm supposed controlling their overtime, saying yes or no to holidays and things like this. And it's probably one of the jobs that I'll pick out from my career that's character building. To the extent, look, I've got to tell you the story. As I settled in, I used to have a great Friday morning. British Rail was fabulous. It was terrible, all in one thing for me. The fabulous part was I had a guaranteed rest day work on a Saturday. And I was, so for a 17-year-old, I was earning quite a decent amount of money with guaranteed overtime every week. Yeah. But I soon worked out I could do my rest day work on a Saturday, I could do that work on a Friday afternoon and just turn up on a Saturday.
Right.
That was the good and the bad all in one.
All in one.
So wrong,
Yeah.
but it was so right for me at that age. I
Yeah.
should probably admit that now, but it was true. And I used to, Friday morning when I used to post my rosters, I used to go sit in the shunter's cabin at Leeds Station. Now this is a character building bit. You learn so much how to interact, how to talk to people, what's important to people. And I'd sit with the shunters in the overalls, and I'd take a blank roster down with me,
Right.
and they'd supply me with cups of tea and they'd fill out the roster. I'll check it over and post it. But that was just a prime example of how good that was. And
yeah,
to know a bit about me and a bit about who I am. After about 3.5 years of doing that, I was like, I probably didn't recognize what I was doing, but it was easy then.
Yeah.
And I'd looked around at people similar ages and how they were progressing. We'd gone through organising for quality, and this is as we prepare for privatisation in the railways. There'd been a big move from the area managers organisation as it was in Leeds through to a lot more central organisation in York. And I saw other people progressing further, even though I had my nice little number. And I thought, I'm missing out here.
Yeah.
So I took on a grade to grade move. So this is me again. At that age, to lose money is quite something, but lost some money.
Yeah.
And I basically went and worked in HR and worked with employee relations and input of pay, and fantastic experience. I didn't last forever in HR because it's not me. But when I thinking of the ages, I'm talking early 90s here. For me to get exposure to the local level union meetings, disciplines, and to understand grading, pay, everything else come together, was probably good exposure for when I became a manager later on. And again, something I think, why did I do that? But actually it gives you a good level of understanding and grounding. Of course
it does, yeah.
A lot of confidence when you're put in those positions where others have never had that exposure before. So yeah, a good time. And throughout my career, I'll talk about amazing, great people I've worked with. So been very, very lucky. I got to probably a stage. I've probably skipped a little bit there because otherwise we'll be talking for hours and hours and hours. Got to probably about 1997.
Right.
And there was an opportunity where we were creating train crew resource supervisors, basically centralising the supervision of drivers and conductors, and bringing it all into a control room environment. Background in rosters. This was going onto shifts. Something I could do. Massive step up. It was in old railway terms, it was an E-grade supervisor. So these were some of the best paid jobs on the railway. Really.
Right.
You lose money generally when you go into management on shifts.
Yeah.
So it was a really, again, fantastic from a young man's point of view.
Yeah.
7 days a week. Cutting your cloth really with understanding train crew, understanding what challenges they have, working with people. There's definitely a leadership part in that. And, we amazing times doing about this. So many stories, so many I'm not allowed to share. My shift partner back in, I think it was 97, he leads Northern Rail's control rooms now.
Right.
Tony Ridley, and lifelong friends you make throughout your railway career.
You do. Yeah.
I should say my wife, who I married a few years back, I started the railway with in 1989.
Yeah.
I'm still in contact with people back from there.
Yeah.
It's fabulous.
There's this expression, isn't there, which a lot of people use. I think it's even got its own hashtag now, of railway family. So, and that is what it is. And I think for anybody who is outside the industry, you wouldn't you wouldn't know about it. And then once you come in and you realise that despite the fact there are thousands of people employed in the UK rail industry, it is actually like a family. You kind of, that connection is quite special and quite unique, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's funny, isn't it? I bump into people I've not seen for 20 years now. I love it. And that's the familyness, I think, about it.
Yeah.
And you understand the challenges people have. You know, as I said, I've probably been a lifelong railway person, and just understanding people from the top to the bottom is really, really critical. So. Yes, I had a fantastic time as a train service controller, or train crew controller, then train service controller. I moved side to side to get more experience in the control room.
Yeah.
I'll say it before somebody else would say I was probably terrible at that job, if I'm honest about it. I wasn't the best, but these were quite tough times. I'm talking about the year 2000. Right. And I always remember Leeds Station having a really big upgrade and the overrunning engineering works, and we'd already gone through driver shortages before then, and going home with headaches. But they were good times, because like I said, that's when you really know who your friends are. And I don't know if it's so much a northern thing where you go to work and they'll call you every name under some slight. You're not allowed to do it, obviously. But
yes, that's what we call banter.
I think that's what we call it. And I still get it now if I bump into any of the guys, but they bring you, always keep you down to earth, keep your feet off the ground, and you know you're doing well if you're getting slagged off by the team. So
that's a measure of success.
Probably showing my character, really. I love that. I love to hear what's correct banter in the work when people, you know, people are just getting on well with it.
Yeah, exactly.
That was great times and great people. Again, I said I was earning a lot of money as an E-grade supervisor. I was doing well. I'd gone through buying my first house and everything else, and I looked around at what everybody else was doing, and I thought, I'm competitive. It's my nature, you know.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm still doing okay, but I've done this now.
Yeah.
What's the next step?
Time to move again. Yeah.
And we were still in the old railway management. So I became my first manager at that point. And I went to be a project manager for 18 months.
Right.
We didn't have any money, so we didn't have any projects. So it was quite interesting times. But however, I worked with a guy called Trevor Slatter, who taught me so much. Now, Trevor was, apart from being a Chef Wednesday fan, but apart from that, he was a great guy because he taught me very much about process, procedures, but also he had an immense self-confidence. And you remember things that people say, and he said, I could do any job on the railway, but there's some jobs that I wouldn't like to do.
Yeah.
And it's when I repeat that, it stayed with me because I thought, what an amazing statement. And first of all, it wasn't arrogant. It was more a case of, I'll give anything a go.
Yeah.
And I loved it, and it stayed with me because actually, there's quite a few jobs I couldn't do. I could only drive a train for a few days. My mindset, I'll be thinking about today, next week, next month.
Absolutely, me too. Yeah.
And so there's jobs that I can't do, and there's jobs that I wouldn't want to do. There's obviously competencies, and it really stayed with me, and it helped build a lot of who I am today. In the self-confidence of actually self-belief, I think. Yeah. So, but yes, I only did that for 18 months before going back into the control room.
Right, it was calling you back.
Opportunity, I think, at the time. There was a lot of changes taking place at that point, and I had the opportunity. Our control room back in the late 90s was a load of desks just thrown together, and it's about understanding people, I think. And understanding the drive and what's right, I guess. And I had the opportunity to write a business case. And and see the project through to the end. And it was I created I think we Region Railways North East at the time, or Northern Spirit. I think we've moved on. We creating that business case and seeing us through to delivery and creating a new control room that was performance driven, and even just creating an environment for people to work, but also had the KPIs of them around it, rather than it just be dirty old computers with desks thrown together.
Yeah.
The business case was built on improved performance, and it absolutely delivered. And there was a lot of pride for me in that point, because I talked about how I'd worked with these guys, and then they were starting to see that life could be better and different. So there was a lot of engagement.
There must be a massive sense of satisfaction with something like that as well, because you've started with something. So you've started kind of with a blank piece of paper almost, because, well, we've just got all these desks all thrown together. We know what we want to get to. So your business plan took it through that. And there are not many jobs, I don't think, where you can actually then stand back and say, oh, here we go. We've actually completed the task. We've completed. And now, obviously, it's into day-to-day running. So they've got to meet the KPIs, but you've actually got it from there to there and it's ready to roll.
Yeah, and I'll make you laugh now, because first of all, the funny thing was Pete Waterman opened it, so
right,
just made it a big deal. For all the millions of pounds worth of projects I've had the last, I don't know, however many years, this cost £250,000.
Oh,
and
my
I'll talk
goodness.
about it more pride than a lot of other things.
Because
that was the first thing that was mine, and
the first one.
And it was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And a catalyst, because it was successful. I became duty control manager, which I enjoyed, and it was a good job. Obviously, shift work. Brought to at this point, we were becoming Northern Rail.
Yeah.
So bringing together the Northwest and Northeast, and one of the big jobs that I had was bringing those two teams together. Negotiating a staff restructuring package, which has been a first for me. Creating control room grades, hugely successful as well. Because it's one control team in two locations, and I know that's gone on strength to strength since those days. And that progressed into assistant service delivery manager and service delivery manager, basically, quite quickly, I suppose. Moving from when I talked about my first management role, this was going into very senior leadership roles, with quite a decent sized team and quite a lot of responsibility. But I loved it because I'd created the control. We then went into co-location with Network Rail and other tops, and having that experience, that was relatively, might not have said it was time, but relatively straightforward project. But then actually leading the team for continuous improvement through the competence systems. And I guess, bringing the teams together with Network Rail and the other talks was another challenge in itself, but loved it. And I was certainly, I remember leading controller workshops for the nationally at that point, and I felt I was probably at the stage where, again, you'll have heard me say this already, what next?
Yes. There's a definite theme here, Martin, isn't there? It's like, you've gone in, you've done exactly, but you've achieved what you set out to achieve. So rather than kind of like sit and just be comfy, it's kind of right, what's next?
It's not something that's a conscious decision, or you say one day I'm ready for tomorrow. It's something that you realise, especially in reflection. I'm quite good at self-reflection and looking back and understanding why. And you look and you say, I was ready for something new. I didn't have a clue what that would be. It's not a case of making a choice. It's being very aware that I've probably got it to the stage where it's ready for somebody else to take on and move to something else. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. So you can probably tell I'm flying through years very quickly. Yeah. But I'm on 2011 now.
Right, blimey, we have gone quick.
Well, there was a lot of jobs there, from duty control manager to where I think it was about 3 years, to assistant service delivery manager, service delivery manager. They were quite combined at that point, so you're probably talking another 4 or 5 years in there.
Yeah.
So it's but yeah, and there was a lot as well. Looking at my background, I had to understand with train planning, and I guess other safety critical management roles I've led. So
yeah, and all that learning, I think, as well. Do you know, as you're kind of talking us through each role, and there's different things, different perspectives that you've got. Do you know, like with the HR role, for example, it's kind of not everybody thinks about going into that particular business function, because it's like, oh well, I'm not a HR, and you and I both know when you were in it was personnel, it wasn't HR. Because I remember those days.
I think that's when I met Caroline.
Personnel, yeah.
So
you're picking up all these different jobs that you've done. You can see on reflection what you've learnt from them, even the one, by your admission, and I wouldn't dream of saying this, but you've said you were terrible at one of them. So it's kind of even that one you've learned, and you're bringing it, and you're building up your portfolio of skills, aren't you? So that you can then go on and do the bigger roles.
I don't think officially I was terrible, but I wasn't as good as most of us. I could just about do it.
Your words, not mine.
You know me by now. I'm bluntly honest, and that's,
absolutely, yeah.
I don't see that as a fault, I'm afraid.
No, it's one of the many things I admire about you. So we're at 2011. Where are you now at this point?
Well, so this is when I'm ready for something new. I don't know what that looks like, and we were in so Northern was the Abellio organisation in Serco. Now I was sat, but this sounds we were it must have been a leadership event in London. I remember being sat on a bus, being transported to an event, and I had Steve Butcher and Rob Warren sat behind me, I think, and they were talking about some job, and I heard my name, and I turned around and said, "What's that?" Anyways, it progressed. They were looking for a head of operations for the northeast of Northern, and they were just obviously chatting about potential people to do that. Big jump from a control room. So I moved over to, went through the process. Obviously, it was good competition and everything else, but became head of operations for Northern. That was train crew depots from Carlisle, Newcastle, down to Leeds, Hull, Sheffield, Doncaster, Skipton, Huddersfield. There's loads of them. I missed about 5 there.
Right.
So it's a big job with about
big area.
I think it's about 1,400 staff around that time. Wow. So it was, but you realise it doesn't matter really if it's 600, 1,000, 3,000 staff. Your leadership ability is similar. You've just got you divide that in the best way you can to be as visible as you can. And I was enjoying that role, but this is where I suppose the career gets a bit more interesting. I was settling in as you do. You made a few quick win changes. The team were doing an amazing job, and the people I had there were just really, really good. And I remember it being, I was back working in Leeds. I've been working in York most of my career, but so I was happy because we spoke more my accent with my language. It was one end of May, one Friday. It was pouring down with rain. I'll never forget it being raining, and I took a call from a recruiter. Would you like to talk to us about a job in New Zealand? And I think in my head, let me think about that for a second. Yes. It was quite calmly, yeah, I'll have that chat.
Yeah.
And so that's how it kicked off. It was a process, obviously, to follow.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I thought, where the hell is that? Had to get a map out, which is quite embarrassing, really. But it's not the sort of place you go straight away onto the map and put your finger on. And I didn't know anything about New Zealand, so I went through the process, and they offered me the job initially of Chief Operating Officer in Auckland. I said, I can remember feeling I was really cheeky, and remember, this is a kid who started on the railway, so all right, I was doing a very senior job, but for somebody to come and talk to you about international recruitment sounds very attractive. I said, I've never been there. There's no way I could make a decision without visiting, and it's absolutely the right thing to do.
Of course it is.
I felt really nervous at asking, but they said absolutely. And I remember they flew us out for a week. Oh, anybody that's travelled the other side of the world for a week, God, that was hard work. The jet lag both ways was hard. First time I'd flown that far. And we were really lucky because we landed on the Friday. It was awful. I got the guy in charge of HR met me at the airport. I'd just been on a flight for about 26 hours, and you're on a week's long interview.
Of course, sure. Yeah.
It's quite challenging. But I had one day off, and we went wine tasting on a little island called Wahiki, and that was it.
Yeah. You were sold, absolutely.
Absolutely sold. So there's a lot more to it because you don't make an international decision. Timing. My house was on the market. Getting ready to move on. If I'd have bought a new house, I'd have probably said no because I was settling into this different lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I also said, the also little story I honestly tell is, I was a season ticket at Leeds United, season ticket holder, and the football was that bad that year. In 2012, I said, I'm not going to get a season ticket next year. I'm just going to turn up. If I'd have had a season ticket, if I'd have paid money for season ticket, I'd turn down the job.
You really are a Yorkshireman, Martin, through and through.
Can't change that, I'm afraid. That's very, very straight, very honest. And so we moved over just before Christmas in 2012 to Chief Operating Officer in Auckland. Loads. The amount I learned, I spent 4 years in Auckland. I was Chief Operating Officer, then Managing Director there. And it's a similar size as of the Metro here, Tyne and Weir.
Yeah.
And we went through electrification, brand new fleet, which was not easy. It was a tough job. A full network transition of fleet. It doesn't happen easily.
No.
And I think one of the things that I learned, probably at fault, you assume, and we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, of course.
And I got to New Zealand and assumed that they would have the processing systems very similar to what we have here.
Yeah.
In the UK rail industry, and no. So we had a lot of work to do, certainly with regards to safety KPIs, and some really serious challenges. And then you have this guy from the UK coming over and say, oh my God, look at this, we need to tackle some of this. But also, how do you communicate that you get buy-in, that people understand what you're talking about?
Yeah.
There's a great saying from New Zealand, she'll be right. No one was killed, nothing happened, and I'm like panicking. Because you can nearly predict what was going to happen. So I was lucky. I made some absolute brilliant friends over there. Some people that have got long industry records. I feel like I'm using names. I'm sorry for this, but an engineer, Mike Yeoman, fabulous friend. He was over here visiting us from New Zealand not long ago. And Hugh Bridges, a safety professional, along with Karen Telliver, who she worked with me for 7 years. There's no way I'd have stayed in the jobs abroad, because she was just a great support. Yeah. And I think they're just to name a few, but without people, you can't do anything.
No, that's what it's all about.
And to wind it up into in that 4 years, not only did we implement the new fleet, which was massive, it really helped boost patronage, performance. But even before the new fleet came along, we were able to increase performance by 7%. And when we left, won safety awards for the changes we put in place.
Right.
And I had my first serious train crash while I was over there. Nobody died, but it was a catalyst for improvement where we were already well along the way of explaining even driver recruitment, competence management, and really having a real change put in place. But it probably helps that belief a little bit more. I've said, yeah, things have got to change. This is going to get serious. But yeah, a fantastic place. We got married there, had a daughter there. The most beautiful country. If you've never been, you must go to New Zealand. Love it. But guess what happened after 4 years?
So itchy feet happening again, Martin, by any chance?
Actually, that's the words I used. I had a CEO, I don't know if it was CEO, but he was based in Paris. I was working for Transdev. And Richard, in my worst French accent, Desjardins. And I bumped into him on a flight recently. He's a fantastic guy. I always got on with him. I remember going in and saying, I'm getting itchy feet. And I thought back and think that was quite brave, really.
I think it's honest though, Martin, is what it is as well. So yeah, brave, but honest.
To some people, to walk into your boss and say, I'm getting itchy feet, it's okay, time for a change. But I remember what he said. He said, you're going sailing, and I didn't have a clue what he was talking about. And I remember my wife's Nina saying to Nina, I don't know what it means. She get a bit nervous. What's that about? So Transdev offered me the opportunity to become managing director of Sydney Ferries.
Right.
And Sydney wasn't a place that we initially wanted to go to.
Right.
It's huge. It's busy.
So a massive contrast to New Zealand life.
Oh, unbelievably so. And we turned down an opportunity to go there a few years prior. But if you like, my job wasn't done in Auckland. So I went over to Sydney Ferries. Very, very different challenges. Two challenges really were there was the relationship with the client wasn't perfect on my arrival. And the union environment I'll just say it was very, very tough and had a very tough reputation, and probably leave it at that. But it was something that you don't experience in the UK industry, that's for sure. And going over there, I can't be anybody else but me. I'm not going to pretend to be something. I can't. It's just not part of me. You can always tell if I'm trying to put something on. It's you can read me a mile away. I got on really, really well with the client, so that was easy. Because again, you can only hear what I'm saying. Sorry, the biggest challenge was we were coming up to the end of a contract, so setting up for a new contract. And if you've got a rubbish client relationship, you're not really going to win the contract.
It's really only going to go one way, isn't it, to be fair?
And I know that you can't really say that, but if you've got a bad relationship, you're stuffed really. Day one. And the union relationship wasn't fabulous either. And I like, whatever I do, I'm always visible. Going to one of my many things that I learned, and was either from Heidi Mottram or Diane Crowther, that used to say, always on show. And I believe that, but you've actually go out and you've got to see the people as well, and they've got to hear from you. So I just spent, as you do your first few months, spending hours upon hours. It was really tough, spending hours going up and down on a ferry. It was on Sydney Harbour. I joke about it now, but the best job in the world in so many.
Absolutely,
But the people were so brilliant. This reputation of this union environment. The union was there to begin with, but the people were so great. And would do anything for you and work with you and I would love to just go sit in their mess rooms and just have a chat, or on a weekend to go and see everybody working, because again, you're just getting a ferry around Sydney Harbour. It's not bad.
Yeah.
So I ended up having a really good relationship with the union as well, because it was straight talking, straightforward.
Exactly.
And quite a lot of effort, I think. And we won a new 9-year contract, which I think was $1.3 billion at that point.
Nice.
And lots of challenges in that contract. But 3 years there, it was a case of, I'd also taken on the responsibility of Brisbane Ferries, Auckland Rail and Wellington Rail under my portfolio.
Right.
But had some, it's always about the people, great people in charge there.
It is, and I'm listening to you, right, and you're kind of saying to us. So I had this time in Sydney, and I used to bob up and down in the harbour in my boat, and I just was visible. And then I had a good relationship with the client, and I had a good relationship with the union. We obviously can't go into this. We haven't got time to go into the kind of how you did that. But I'm feeling like I just need to draw attention to the fact that whatever you did in that, it's not just about kind of, it is about being visible, but it's about, I think, what you bring to the party is that ability to just be yourself. What you see is what you get with you, isn't it? And I think that is a massive part, combined with your willingness to be visible and your understanding of the importance of being visible, that gets you to the stage where there's going from a relationship where we don't think we're going to win this contract again to a 9-year contract by bobbing around in the ferry in the harbour in Sydney and chatting to people. I just feel like I just want to, it's not easy stuff that you do, but you make it look really easy.
I think I'm one of these people that if I was nervous, people wouldn't tell. So I'm quite lucky in that respect, but I can't be anybody else better apart from who I am.
Yeah.
Relationships are incredibly important. And for relationships, I don't care what job title people have got. Obviously, there's a respect comes with a job title, but actually, it doesn't matter if you're the deckhand, the master, you're working in the office, you have a client. A job. What I always say is my job title doesn't make me.
Yeah,
it's who I am.
We're all people, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're all people, and we're all in this together. So you've kind of in Sydney, then you've gone from ferry to also Brisbane ferries to then having some of the rail businesses brought into your portfolio as well. Yeah,
I've got to admit, at that point, it was a case of they all had managing directors in place, so it was a case of okay, what did I want to be, and where did I want to go, and we'd had. Personally, we'd both lost parents throughout the time of being abroad. We were renting houses, and we said we're getting to that age where we need to grow up. And Sydney's extremely expensive as well to purchase what we wanted. Yeah. And we'd come to the conclusion it was time to come home.
Yeah.
And we said, okay, well, when you decide to move on, if you like, in a workplace, it's a strategic decision, isn't it? Because you can't knee-jerk to the first thing that's in front of you. You've got to be prepared with your family to move and be ready to make that big commitment. And I remember I was the decision week. I do my roll my sleeves up and get on with things. I don't hold back. When we decided that as a family, I think I'd seen my current role advertised on LinkedIn from yourself or one of, I think it might have been Caroline, and I was also in discussions about a different role in the UK as well.
Yeah,
I think it was a case of there's something exciting taking place in the northeast. It's a city, Newcastle, where I am now.
Yeah,
it's a city that I knew but didn't know really well.
Yeah,
Tyne-Away Metro, I'd been on it, but I didn't know very much about it. So, and the attraction for me was I've got ferries. I've got my Shields ferry. I've got bus contracts. I've got the Tyne-and-Wear Metro, but that's not it really. We're vertically integrated.
Yeah.
So anybody that knows the region we're classed as light rail, but my network here has responsibility for carrying a 32 wagon dangerous goods. Now, if that's light rail and you compare light rail, that's something a little bit different, you know. Yeah. And we've got projects. We've got a 362 million project for what looks like the building looks amazing, incredible new depot. And we've got a new fleet, a contract with Stadler to provide us a new fleet. With the first train expected to arrive, I'll say on the 1st of December, roughly around that date, right. To go into service next year. So that's challenging, but exciting as well. So you can see the attraction here, as well as being a PTE. We were in desperate need of change. You know, the capital investment to upgrade the network, the infrastructure, is so needed, but needing long-term deals, so that we can replace all of our overhead lines, and so that we can get on a program of renewals, which is something that's totally different to where I've been before. Obviously, I've had assets, but not the infrastructure side.
Yeah.
We're driver only. We don't have ticket offices. We push a smart card for our services.
Yeah.
You know, does this sound familiar to where a lot of places want to be?
Absolutely. Yeah.
We've got excitement whilst we've got people challenges. Only 26% of my workforce at the moment, I've got over 1,000 employees here, are female. It's a massive challenge. Yeah. So we've just created our people and culture strategy now, and you could argue we're a bit behind the ball, but actually there's learnings to be done. There's massive opportunity.
To be honest, I mean, at 26%, you're probably leading the way, Martin, in the UK rail industry, because it's the female representation is not brilliant, but although it is better, gender representation is better than the ethnic minority side of things, because we're not great at that either. So the whole diversity piece is a massive challenge for the whole industry.
Well, I'm proud to say that out of about 37% of those are in senior leadership roles.
Right.
I've certainly significantly increased the amount of gender diversity on my senior team here, but that's going to take some time. But it's also the thought process behind it. It's the you're right, when it's not just about gender. It's the inclusion, it's the celebrating events such as Diwali, and the education around the organisation has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
This last few years.
I loved the photos of you all at Pride. I thought I just loved them. There was a brilliant one of you. I'm sure you had some glitter on your face. It was just fabulous. I loved it. Absolutely loved it. Newcastle Pride.
That's a prime example, isn't it? That's something that we've never done before, and we were huge representation and part of the organisation as well. The only downside, that's where I got COVID for the first time.
Oh, remember? Yeah, I remember.
But amazing, and I think a lot of this is actually getting the people together and just enjoying ourselves, but actually being part of understanding that we can't stand still. And we've got in this country, I feel like I'm preaching now to you, but for all people, we've got a recruitment challenge. We're really struggling to recruit.
Yeah,
really struggling to recruit. And it's not, first of all, the visible part was probably the lower paid roles, but actually it's throughout the organisation. It's become more and more challenging, and we've got to be different. So for us to put in a agile working is never heard of where we are here, and all of the trying to make sure that we are attractive to come and join. And Nexus is changing. It's really exciting.
Yeah, that whole kind of employer value proposition has never been as important as it is now, and there's so much that organisations could be doing to make themselves more attractive, which is a whole other conversation. But it brings us, some of the stuff that you're saying now, Martin, brings us nicely into the kind of second half, if you like, of this conversation, which is around your three wishes. So I kind of have this question for you that says, if I was to pull my magic wand out of my bag and say, right, Martin Kearney, I'm giving you three wishes for what the things that you would like to see happen in the UK transport industry to make it better than it is today, what would those three wishes be?
I always think answering this makes life sound so easy.
It does. I absolutely agree. Yeah.
I feel like I've got to be careful here. However, I've probably got 10 wishes, but I'll only give you 3.
The top 3.
One of the key things that I've probably not covered so much today is on customer experience. We've got to get it right as a rail industry, but also as a transport industry. And when you start off with customer experience, you've got to start off with that ticketing. We've got to be better. We've got to be more integrated. And in some ways in transport, we've got to remove some of the competition angles and make it easy for the customer. Less searching, much easier.
Yeah.
And learn from other people who have done it. When you're going onto stations and you're looking, and you've got to think from a customer's view, which company do I go to? Well, actually, what are we playing at? There are some discussions that are taking place that actually one person on that station needs to represent the station.
Yeah,
that's a real passion of mine. I say I'm making it sound very easy, but I think the customer experience, we nationally, I think specifically in rail, but actually you get across transport here and say, how can we make that better?
Absolutely agree.
And I think what we need to look at is the competition angle of things, because I'm a great believer that the franchising system has worked and has helped us drive innovation through the industry. But compete for the franchises or whatever the next step that will be. However, once you're in, you're not really competing against each other.
No.
But I'm not a great believer of competing one train company against another. Actually, let's make a decision. What's the best service to get a customer from A to B? And let's create it. So, not an easy solution to make, but one that comes into my third one is people talk about the priorities in rail, and I've always kept this simple. Safety has got to be given. Yeah. It's the first thing we look at. It's always, but we've got to perform well. We know how evidence tells us for years and years and years, but if you're high performing, customers come back to you.
Yeah.
We're in a time now that as an industry, our reputation isn't fantastic. We've got industrial relations challenges all over the place. Strikes taking place. Yes, I know there's a cost of living crisis. We've got to look after our people as well. We mustn't forget these are our people. We're responsible for them. Yeah. We're responsible for looking after them. Let's try and do this together.
Yeah.
Is it so difficult that we can't find a way of working forward together? I'm making it sound easy, I know. But I'm very passionate about this. But if we don't get customers back on our trains and back onto buses, onto our transport systems, then the harder this becomes. The more challenges we have industrial relations, the more the reputation damage becomes. And people make the choices we don't want them to do.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
To add to that, I'd probably say we're not in competition with people working from home. That's a discussion I have around here quite often.
Yeah.
I'm not in competition. I don't want people in cars. That's my competition.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
If a new modern way of working is hybrid, whatever that will look like, and that's fine. I'm not competing about people being at home, but let's make sure we've got a good service that people choose transport.
Yeah, perfect. Perfectly put. And like you say, it does, when I ask this question, and no matter how supercharged my wand is, then it's always one of these, it's like, I know it sounds easy, I know it sounds simple, and we know it isn't. But actually, I think as an industry, we do have an ability to overcomplicate things, when actually, let's just keep going back to the basic principles of what are we here to do and how do we do that well. So thank you for your top three. And so to leave us with some pearls of wisdom, Martin, to bring our conversation to a close. There's been so much that you've shared with us that's really kind of triggering different thoughts off with me about the importance of reflecting on the roles that you've done throughout your career. What have you learned from them? Because there's certainly roles in my career when I look back and I hated them. There was one, not many, I would have to say, there's probably two, but one of them I used to cry on my way to work because I didn't want to be there. And it's kind of when I look back and I think, God, yeah, that job was the job that really helped me understand how to influence people who didn't like me. That's what that was all about. So, and yeah, and I'll not name names, but thank you to the person who gave me that lesson in life. So there's loads of wisdom in what you've shared with us already, but share a saying or a quote or something which means something to you that you use on a regular basis, which kind of helps inspire or focus you.
I'm going to share I'm full of little one-line sayings that I hate it about myself. I'm going to share the first one that I hate, and I think it's from the book, but what I'm going to share is a few quotes I've been given, or a few sayings that I've probably stolen from different people, saying them over a few years. Yeah. And the one that I really despise, but it's so true, is that culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Right. Yeah.
And for anybody watching, just let that sink in.
Yeah.
Because you can have the best plans you like. If you don't have a culture, you
are so right.
You can forget it. But I do really dislike that one. I think it's too cheesy.
It is, but it hits home, Martin. When you just hear it off the cuff and it's like, what? But when you think about it, it's so right. And there's a lot of people with strategy in their title. And not so many have got culture in the title, so go figure.
A couple of others I'll leave you with then is, I've already mentioned one, is you're always on show as a leader. Yeah. Never forget that. No matter where you are, what you're doing, you're always on show. The mirror test is one I always tell with my team. Can you look at yourself in the mirror? Can you ask yourself, is this the right decision, or what is the right decision to make? Because that's when making tough decisions as well. I'd probably two others as well. It's not what you do, but how you do it that matters. Yeah. That's one that would have probably come from my mum.
Yeah.
She would have, and we would talk about influences. My God, she had 5 kids and she's a strong woman. Yeah. But she's absolutely a big influence on me. But that's one that she would probably say. And then the final one is at the end of each week, what have you achieved this week?
Yeah.
Reflection one. And I just think you can't do that every day, but for me, each week you can ask yourself, have I actually achieved anything? What have I achieved?
Yeah.
And reflect.
That's so important. So important, because in the lives that we lead, where time just flies, weeks and months go past, and you can end up, I know I certainly do, thinking, well, where's the time gone and what have I achieved in that time? So that importance of sitting down on a regular basis, ideally weekly, Friday evening, right, what have I done this week? What have I actually moved forward? What have I achieved? Because there's loads of stuff there, but we tend to always be, and obviously one of your traits, your personal traits, is what next? But actually, but what have I done? What have I done? Let's acknowledge that before we then say, and now what next?
Yeah, definitely.
Martin, I have thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. I always do. I love your company. I do. I find you really interesting, and I love your stories as well. I just wish we had more time to share more of them. But you and I will do that over a bottle of something red nearer to Christmas, I think would be a plan. And thank you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for being game enough to come and join me on the podcast. I do appreciate it very much. And you and I will see each other soon. Take care.
Thank you, Nina.
My huge thanks to Martin for joining me on the virtual Intuitive Insights podcast couch. I hope you've enjoyed that episode, and we will be back with you shortly with more career stories from people in the UK transport industry.